Christopher Plummer, the name that carries elegance, the voice that commands timeless respect, the legend whose presence defined generations of cinema and stage. But what if behind the sophistication, the brilliance and the celebrated legacy lies a life shaped by inner battles, quiet regrets, and moments that carried more weight than the world ever realized? What if the journey to becoming one of the most respected actors of all time came with a cost that could never truly be measured? Because this is not just a story of acclaim. This is a story of identity, of discipline, of confronting oneself in a world that constantly demands perfection. Born in Toronto into a family with deep cultural roots, his upbringing was influenced by intellect and artistry, yet it was also marked by distance. His parents separated when he was very young, leaving him to be raised by his mother in an environment that valued refinement but lacked emotional closeness, and that early separation planted something subtle yet powerful within him, a sense of independence paired with an underlying loneliness. A need to excel, not just for recognition, but for validation. And that drive would later define his career, but also contribute to the internal complexities he carried throughout his life. Discovering acting at an early age, he quickly showed exceptional talent, gravitating toward theater, where discipline and dedication were essential. His performances were precise, controlled, and deeply expressive, earning him recognition across Canada and eventually internationally. But even as his career flourished, there was an internal tension, a perfectionism that pushed him relentlessly, a desire to be not just good, but exceptional. And that pursuit, while admirable, came with its own emotional cost, because striving for excellence often leaves little room for self-compassion. Early success brought opportunities on stage and screen, leading to roles that showcased his range and depth. But it was his portrayal in The Sound of Music that brought him global fame, a role that would become iconic, yet also one he had a complicated relationship with, as it overshadowed other aspects of his work and created a perception that did not fully align with his artistic identity. And that disconnect became a source of quiet frustration, because while the world celebrated one version of him, he continued to seek roles that challenged him, that allowed him to explore the full extent of his abilities. And as his career progressed, he took on a wide range of characters in both film and theater, demonstrating a commitment to his craft that remained unwavering across decades. Yet behind the scenes, there were personal struggles that added depth to his story, including battles with alcohol earlier in his life, a challenge he later addressed with honesty, acknowledging the impact it had on both his personal and professional experiences, and highlighting the importance of growth and self-awareness in overcoming such difficulties. And as the years passed, he achieved critical acclaim, including an Academy Award later in his career, proving that his dedication and talent were enduring. But even with recognition, there remained a reflective quality to his perspective, an understanding that success does not erase the complexities of a life lived fully. And at 91, that reflection carries a profound emotional weight, because it encompasses decades of experiences, achievements, challenges, and moments of introspection. It is a stage of life where the focus shifts from ambition to understanding, from striving to reflecting on what has been gained and what may have been lost along the way. And perhaps the most devastating aspect of his story is not defined by a single tragedy, but by the accumulation of those quieter moments, the relationships that required balance, the internal expectations that demanded constant effort, the awareness of time and the recognition that even a life filled with accomplishment carries unanswered questions and unspoken reflections. And yet, through all of this, there is a sense of grace, a recognition that his journey was not about perfection, but about exploration, about pushing boundaries, about continuously evolving as both an artist and an individual. And that is what makes his story so compelling and so deeply human, because it reveals that even those who achieve greatness are shaped by experiences that are complex, layered, and sometimes difficult to articulate. And as his legacy continues to influence actors, audiences, and storytellers around the world, there is an enduring reminder that behind every celebrated figure is a personal narrative filled with moments of triumph and challenge, alike moments that define not just a career, but a life. And in that understanding, there is both inspiration and quiet heartbreak. The recognition that greatness is often accompanied by a depth of experience that extends far beyond what is visible, and that the true measure of a life lies not only in its achievements, but in the journey that shapes them. And in that journey lies the enduring impact of a man who gave so much to his craft, while navigating the complexities of his own story with resilience, dedication, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. The later years of a life shaped by discipline and artistic devotion often bring a different kind of clarity, one that is not driven by ambition or the need to prove anything, but by reflection, by the quiet evaluation of what it all truly meant. Because after decades of embodying characters, of stepping into countless lives and emotions, there comes a return to self, a moment where the performance fades, and what remains is the individual who carried it all. And in that space, there is both peace and complexity. A recognition that while the world remembers the roles, the accolades, and the legacy, there exists a deeply personal narrative filled with choices, sacrifices, and moments that only he could fully understand. And that realization carries a certain emotional weight, because it highlights the contrast between public perception and private experience. The idea that a life celebrated outwardly can still hold unanswered questions internally. And as time continues its steady movement, there is a shift from seeking validation to seeking meaning, from the pursuit of excellence to the understanding of its cost. And in that shift, there is a deeper appreciation for the journey itself, the lessons learned, the growth experienced, and even the struggles that once felt burdensome but now appear as essential parts of a larger story. Because those challenges, those moments of doubt and difficulty, were not separate from his success. They were intertwined with it, shaping the perspective that allowed him to bring authenticity and depth to every role he played. And yet acknowledging this does not remove the emotional complexity. It simply reframes it, allowing space for both pride and introspection to exist simultaneously. And that balance is not easily achieved, especially for someone who spent so much of his life striving for perfection, because perfection leaves little room for acceptance. It demands constant refinement, constant evaluation, and often creates a distance between who one is and who one feels they must be. And in later years, there is often a quiet reconciliation, a gradual understanding that perfection was never the goal, that authenticity, depth, and honesty were the true measures of a life well lived. And that realization brings with it a sense of calm, a release from the pressures that once defined every decision, every performance, every moment. And still, even within that calm, there remains a sense of longing, not regret in a conventional sense, but a reflective curiosity about the paths not taken, the moments that could have unfolded differently, the relationships that may have been experienced in other ways. And that curiosity is a natural part of reflection. It is not a sign of dissatisfaction, but an acknowledgement of the richness of life, of the many possibilities that exist within it. And as he navigated this stage, there was also an awareness of legacy, not just as something left behind, but as something that continues to live through the impact on others, through the influence on future generations of actors, through the stories that continue to resonate long after they are told. And in that understanding, there is a profound sense of fulfillment, because it connects individual effort to a broader continuum. It transforms personal achievement into collective inspiration. And yet, even with that awareness, there is a quiet humility, a recognition that no legacy is entirely complete, that every life, regardless of its accomplishments, remains a work in progress until its final moment. And that perspective adds depth to the narrative, transforming it from a story of success into a story of humanity. A reminder that behind every great figure is a person who experienced life in all its complexity, who navigated both triumph and challenge, who sought meaning and understanding in a world that is constantly evolving. And in that truth lies the enduring essence of his journey, not just the roles he played, but the life he lived, the lessons he carried, and the quiet reflections that continue to resonate beyond the boundaries of time and recognition.